In this week's Capital Connection, CBS 58's Emily Fannin with politics editor J.R. Ross take a look back at the spring election, discussing voter turnout and the current political outlook ahead of the next election.
Jared, this week Wisconsin is entering a new era of Wisconsin politics after Jana Protasewicz's big victory that will now flip the court in liberals' favor. Now, let's just talk about some of the key takeaways, because there's a lot to cover after the post-election. First, I think we got to specifically just hit on turnout real quick. 1.8 million voters headed to the polls, which is one of the highest turnouts that we've seen here in comparable elections in a non-presidential primary year. But we have to also talk about the issue of abortion, because what I'm hearing from Republicans that I've talked to this week, as long as there is still an abortion ban on the books, Republicans are likely going to still struggle or continue to lose statewide.
The question is, was this almost a de facto referendum on abortion, right? I mean, liberals were jazzed to turn out. There's no two ways about it. You saw that what was going on in various places. So that's one thing to think about. Two, legislative Republicans can't get out of this box. We have seen already an effort to add exceptions for rape and incest. Bill written by Republicans shot down other Republicans within hours. There are Republicans who know this is a political loser for them, and they have to address it somehow. Other Republicans know it's a political loser, but say, morally speaking, I don't disagree with the 1849 ban. This is what I believe in morally. They are not going to compromise on that issue. I've talked to Republicans who said their best bet may be to have the court, the Supreme Court, throw out the 1849 ban, leave in place the 20-week ban that Scott Walker signed in 2015, and maybe take it off the table, because they will tell you, if they're talking about whether you can have an abortion in Wisconsin, they are losing. They're talking about at what point you can have an abortion. Like, that's better territory for them, but they need help to get there because they can't do it on their own.
This was also a prime example of what was, maybe people didn't think, it was a nonpartisan race. But Protasiewicz used a playbook that we saw through the midterms, talking about key issues that voters care about. Of course, abortion, but she also brought into the fold redistricting. Now that we know the state legislative maps are very likely going to be re-litigated, or actually we know there's going to be a new challenge after I spoke to a liberal law firm this week. So it kind of goes to show that Dan Kelly didn't talk about the issues. So that was also something that was kind of proven to be a successful going forward for judicial races, that they're actually going to get even more partisan, even though they don't have an R&D next to their name.
Protasiewicz was the right candidate to take advantage of an electorate that wants to know what you're going to do for me. All right, post-Dobbs, U.S. Supreme Court throwing out Roe v. Wade in 2022, liberal voters want to know, you are going to do what I want you to do. You are going to be there with me on this fight to get me jazzed to turn out. For conservatives, their argument was, well, we want to preserve the rule of law. Does that inspire people, get them excited? Not like abortion does, not like redistricting does. There's an enthusiasm gap, and you saw that loud and clear on Tuesday.
Also, just want to hit very quickly on money. We've talked about it multiple times on this show. It was shattered records, but that also had an impact too, with both campaigns' ability to get their message out, but ads really just dominated this race too. But also, big question here now, JR, is, do Republicans have a statewide demographic problem? I ask that because most Republicans I'm talking to say yes. They have now lost the last 14 out of 17 statewide elections. And looking at the maps, let's highlight the Bow and Wow counties. Looking at these percentages here, Dan Kelly did not hit his numbers in the Wow counties. Very surprising, too, Jana Protasiewicz won all of the Bow counties, too. And also, just to highlight, it appears that Ozaukee, in the past few statewide elections, is turning more purple than ever.
So, again, 1.85 million people, huge turnout for a spring election. But 3.2 million voted in the presidential election in 2020. So, if we get back to even motivation, it may look differently. That said, Republicans can no longer see the numbers in Waukesha, Ozaukee, Washington counties, the WOW counties they are seeing. They cannot lose Brown, Outagamie, Winnebago County the way they did in 2023 and 2020, Daniel Kelly on the ballot, especially with what's happening in Dane and Milwaukee counties. If you look at those two from Tuesday, Protasiewicz had a 260,000 vote lead coming out of those two counties. She won statewide by 203,000. Republicans have to find a way to change that trajectory. There are Republicans living in Dane County and Milwaukee County. Shocker for everybody at home, they're actually two of the best counties for Republican votes in raw vote totals. But the percentages keep going down. They have to reverse that. If they don't, you're coming out in a huge disadvantage.
The last takeaway that I want to point out is this the end of the Walker era? I'm talking about Scott Walker. And because, I mean, they had a string of victories. They built this Republican machine once he got sworn into office. They kept winning for many, many years, for over, about 8 years. But it seems like that trend has been coming to an end.
Well, a couple of things here. One, Walker and his kind of machine got behind Rebecca Clayfish for governor last year. Then you get the primary. Walker and his backers got behind Daniel Kelly, got through the primary or Jennifer Doro, getting to the general election. With appointments, the First Circuit Court of Appeals in Milwaukee got beat 2-1. Now, the things he signed, Act 10, right to work, go on the list of what happened over those 8 years. We don't know what the court's going to do with this new majority, what will be challenged, but those things might go away. And the bigger issue, though, is this machine that was built with Walker, Paul Ryan, the former House Speaker, Reince Priebus, former State National Party Chair, Robin Vos, the Assembly Speaker, Scott Fitzgerald, the then Senate Majority Leader. They built this apparatus that was successful year in and year out. And oh, by the way, they had a state party that was raising money in good amounts because Scott Walker was a phenomenal fundraiser. They've lost that. Now the Democrats have the edge fundraising. They have the East Wing with Governor Tony Evers. They have a chair in Ben Wickler, who's a great fundraiser. They are setting records every cycle that they're pulling in. Who's the leader going to be? Is it Mike Gallagher, Brian Stile? Brian Schimming's the new party chair. He's still getting his feet wet as chair. What can he do to get those big donors to invest in Wisconsin? Because they have a gap to make up. It's unclear if they can do it before next fall, when we could again be a deciding state in the race for the White House.
The party definitely has some reevaluating to do in their strategy. All right, that will do it for this week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, JR. To find all of our Capital Connection segments, head to our website, cbs58.com.